Welcome to Power Your Life Today. I'm Kristy Jo, Mind and Body Strategist. Today I am talking with Niyi Shobo, who is a former NFL running back for the New Orleans Saints. He also played at Oregon State Beaver and was an All-American at Portland State. He is a mindset and peak performance coach for pro athletes and top performers, CEOs, and executives. As the founder of I'mNotYou.com and podcast host of Sports Motivation and Get Your Mind Right podcasts on iTunes with over 1 million downloads, he is helping people everywhere to build supreme confidence and to dominate under pressure. He's a husband and father of 5 from Portland, Oregon. And in this conversation, you are going to hear about why using the word sacrifice puts you at a disadvantage. He'll help you clarify why you do what you do to actually reach your goals. He will talk about how having fear or anxiety is okay, but he'll teach you how to stop it from holding you back. He's going to teach you about becoming a lion in the jungle that gets what they want and the 4 steps to achieve more and leave feelings of underachievement behind. Are you comfortable in your life? Are you enjoying cruise control? Niyi is going to actually give me some personal advice to help me reach my next level in life. So stay tuned for that. It's pretty wicked awesome. By the way, if you are new to Power Your Life Today, I would love to share with you my free audio tracks to help you plow through resistance over at poweryourlifetoday.com. Whether it's emotional, mental, or spiritual trials, mindset coaching is where we can find solutions and begin making more progress. These 5 audio tracks are going to channel you through lack of motivation, emotional stressors, and just that feeling of being stuck. Now, this is free and my gift to you. So head over to poweryourlifetoday.com and get those 5 audio tracks today.
My dad is from Nigeria, so he came here when he was 18 and gave me and all my 3 brothers Nigerian names. So I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon. Like I said, from a big family, soccer family. My dad came here from Nigeria, and I decided in 7th grade, after I put on a little weight and decided I hated running, that I would play football. And so I got into football when I was in 7th grade, absolutely fell in love with it. And it took me all the way through high school and to college, where I walked on at Oregon State. So if you guys listening don't know what a walk-on is, it's pretty much, like a reserve player or a temp, at a job or a big company. And so you're not very high on the totem pole. You got to work your way up. And I did that. I worked my way up, got myself a lot of playing time, but ultimately never got a scholarship. And so took myself to Portland State, where I really stood out in my senior season there and became an All-American and ultimately, accomplished my goal and my dream of becoming an NFL player, where I got picked up by the New Orleans Saints and played there for 2 seasons. But much like we all figure out when we, reach that next stage in our careers and our lives, nothing lasts forever. And there's always a lot more challenges at the next stage. So I dealt with a ton of injuries at my time in the NFL and ultimately got cut in the middle of the season, that the team that I was on, the New Orleans Saints, when they won the Super Bowl. So I had to go back home and, watch them win the Super Bowl while I was without a job and done playing football. And so that led to a lot of, or I would say about a couple years of intense, confusion, frustration, anxiety, indecision about what I wanted to do next. My identity was challenged. I had no idea what I wanted to do. At that time, I had 2 children. The relationship with my son's mom was in shambles, and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I started getting into mentoring some kids at local high school where I was coaching. And I noticed that they had no idea, number one, how talented they were and how far they could go. They had big dreams and aspirations, but they didn't have any idea what it was going to take in order to get there. And that was really frustrating to me, because I felt like there were so many things that I learned in my time in the NFL that I was like, man, people need to really know what it takes, because I felt like I could have prolonged my career had I known these things, had I been aware. And so I took these kids up under my wing and started training them in things and showing them my process, because I was at the point where I was still trying to get back into the NFL. And so that sort of evolved naturally, where I started doing some personal training. I started doing camps where I would show kids the mindset and the habits that they needed in order to succeed, as they go on. And in the meantime, I became a firefighter as well. And as it started to progress, I decided I wanted to work specifically on the mindset portion, because I realized that while you can go places and figure out how to learn how to squat and, do all these cool things in the gym and build strength, and all those things are super important, what I found was that there's a void when it comes to the mindset behind it, because a lot of these kids were big, fast, and strong, but had no idea how to perform under pressure. They had no idea how to handle adversity when it inevitably comes. They had no idea how to manage all the other aspects of their life. So while they could do well on the football field, they had no idea how to manage their time and, build their relationships and be organized and systematic in accomplishing all of their goals, not just, the goals on the football field. And so I just dove in, and I had no idea what I was doing, much like a lot of people when they start off something that, not a ton of people are doing. And so I just committed myself to learning and growing at a fast rate. And ultimately last year I quit my job as a firefighter to do what I'm doing full time now. I have a flourishing coaching and consulting business where I work with high performers, teaching them the mindset and the habits that they need to dominate in their arena. And a lot of cool things going on digitally. I also have 2 podcasts, sports motivation podcast and Get Your Mind Right podcast. So I'm a busy dude, but I take pride in the fact I'm trying, and I'm married, I have my wife and 5 children as well, 32, and I feel like I'm just getting started. I'm in my prime, or just entering my prime, I should say, and I feel great about how things are going and the work that I do.
Oh, that's incredible. And what a remarkable journey you've been on. And the biggest thing, I want to move through different segments of your story that you've shared with us and unpack some of these things that you've learned and sharing with our audience today. We're here today to help our listeners really understand what are those little key principles they can start applying today to power themselves up, to be better, to stand stronger, to live with more value. But I think the biggest takeaway from just hearing the entire summary of what you've been through up until this point is that no matter what happens, you've hit different parts in the road where you thought you were going a different direction, then shift, and then you thought you were going a different direction and shift, and those pivots, I guess that's a better word, that every time you pivoted, you actually grew stronger and you were able to grow and progress more than if you may have kept going down that road. And I think that's something really important for our listeners to remember is just because you hit like either a dead end or something goes wrong or like you experience all the injuries and, things change. It's life. But we pivot and we grow and all of that. So let's go back to this when you were a walk-on, because this is huge of itself. And I love that you broke it down for us of what that really means. So tell us what, hard work and instilling successful habits, what is required to make sure we have really a good plan to succeed in place?
That's a great question, because that's actually one of the biggest reasons why I am doing what I'm doing now, because like I said, I would see these kids and I'm realizing they have no idea. And so I want to show people what the process looks like. So back when I was a walk-on, like I said, you don't even get to eat meals with the team. You have to do all the work. You have to put in more work, but you don't get any of the recognition, and you don't get a scholarship as well. So your school is not paid for. So what that looks like is that you have to make sure that when it comes to, for example, being a football player, you got to know what it takes in order to be great in whatever it is that you're doing. So that's the first thing. Most people in their job, in their career, if you ask them what is actually required to dominate or to succeed in your area, they're not sure. You've got to know exactly what it takes. So, for example, football player, you got to be strong, you got to know the plays, you got to be able to be, flexible and nimble so as to not get injured, et cetera, et cetera. And I can list them off. And then it's doubling down in those areas. So I remember, my first season, I stayed back home. Everyone's going home for summer. I stayed there. And I rode my bike I remember I still had a CD player. That was before iPods were really popular. I would ride my bike. I worked at a Pepsi factory where I would bale cans for about 6 hours a day just to, make some money in the summer. And then after that, I would work out all day, all day. I would go back to the facility. I would do the weightlifting. I would run stadium stairs at night with my CD player in my hand, and I slept on one of those eggshell carton things, those little bed covers at my friend's house on in his living room. And so that's just a simple example of, and people call it sacrifice. For me, that word is, I don't call it sacrifice because it was what I wanted. Because when you want something really bad, you'll pretty much do whatever it takes in order to get it. And if you look at things always as if it's a sacrifice, then that assumes that there's loss there. And no one likes to feel the feeling of loss and so I don't really like to use the word sacrifice. I get up super early. I spend a lot of time conditioning my mind. I spend a lot of time doing those little things that make a big difference. And I don't necessarily consider it a sacrifice because there's a strong purpose behind it. So I would tell anyone, whatever it is you're trying to do, and I can give you some small little tips and things, but the biggest thing is to know exactly why you're doing it and make sure that purpose really resonates with you. That's where I feel like a lot of people go wrong. So I always use this example, Muhammad Ali versus Floyd Mayweather, right? Two of the greatest boxers of all time, different eras, but they'll both go down as the greatest in their era, right? And so Muhammad Ali, his purpose he actually didn't even like boxing that much. He hated training, but he did it to raise awareness and bring awareness to the black communities at that time, in the 60s and the 70s, when a lot of bad things were happening for blacks in America. Floyd Mayweather, his purpose has nothing to do with bringing awareness to black communities. His purpose is about making as much money as he possibly can and securing the wealth and long-term legacy of his family. Now, either one of those are not right or wrong. I'm not judging either one, but they both have a strong purpose, and it both gets them to do things that other people simply will not do. And so the cool thing about Floyd Mayweather, while people can judge him and say, oh, he's all about the money, he's unapologetic about his purpose, and he knows it. And so he knows what his results are. He knows what his outcome is, and he doubles down on that, and that fuels him. So you have to find your purpose. What is the reason why you're doing what you're doing? And if you lack motivation, that is because you don't have your purpose. It's not because you haven't figured out how to do, you need to find your purpose. That the time needs to be spent there. And people make that a lot more difficult than it needs to be, because all a purpose is a feeling. That's it. It's not like a cool set of words or some fancy mantra. You can, craft it however you like. But at the end of the day, the purpose is a feeling. So when I get up, I'm tired when I get up, but I got 5 children. So they are the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I have a very strong purpose for what I'm doing. So there's no lack of motivation for me. And that doesn't mean every day I'm running around charged up and fired up. There are many days that I am, but there are a lot of days where I don't feel like getting up, where I'm tired, where I don't feel like going to work, but I do it anyway. And I was actually just watching the movie Selma with my children a couple weeks ago, the story of Martin Luther King and the March in Selma. And it's funny, a lot of people don't realize Martin Luther King was like depressed the last couple of years of his life. This dude was depressed. He was drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes. He was depressed. He knew he was going to die soon, but he still did what he had to do because his purpose was so strong. They were threatening his family. They were calling Coretta Scott King, and threatening to kill his kids. And his wife was at home by herself with all of his, I think it's 4 kids. But his purpose was so strong that it got him to do things that other people say, man, how do you do that? And we all can do that. Like, there's nothing that you can't do. I'm sure people listening to your podcast, they've got a ton of tactics and strategies over the course of listening to your podcast, reading books, doing all these things. The question now becomes, why don't you do them? Why don't you apply them? And the reason is because you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. And you might be doing something for reasons that aren't yours. There might be somebody else's. It might be your mom, your dad, might be society, what people have told you should be doing it for. People who work in, regular 9-to-5 jobs, I'm not knocking that. But if you're doing that and you're not happy, you don't know the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. Because you actually can work in a 9-to-5 job, in a regular job, quote unquote, salary paying and all of that. And you can work there with a sense of urgency to get to the next stage, wherever you want to do, whether that's start your own business, whether that's work at a better company, or, be a stay-at-home mom, become financially secure, whatever it is. You can do that. And you can have the motivation right now. It doesn't have to suck right now. And I know that because that's what happened with me when I became a firefighter and I was working at a factory job after coming from the NFL and miserable. And once I finally figured out what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it, I was going to that job every single day whistling because I knew where I was going. And I was listening to my audio books every day. I was learning, and I was growing, and I was doing my homework assignments for my firefighter class and, my lunch breaks. And I had a sense of urgency. And it doesn't always look sexy. And we see it in the movies, the little 1 minute clip, where they're like, working out like the Rocky movies, right? It's not a 1 minute clip in real life. It's long. It's a grind. But it can be fun. It can be very, very fulfilling. And during those times is when the most profit is made. And when I say profit, it's obviously not money. It's the wisdom and the insight that comes, the gain that you get from going through real things, from things that are tough, that are grueling. That's when you build that what I call mental stamina, the ability to endure over long periods of time. And so I know that's a long answer to your question, but I feel very strongly about that because people must know that it's not going to be fun all the time, but it can be fulfilling and it's necessary.
Well, and I think what you just barely said where it's not going to be fun all the time, and I love that you point out in the movies, it's quick, and then boom, they're on top of the world and success and yay. And
right.
We live in such an entitlement and quick expectations world that we sometimes don't know how to endure the grind. We don't know how to have the mindset to endure long changes. I work a lot with people changing their bodies. And when we're talking, 50 plus pounds, we're not talking a 3-week little quick fix. We're talking up to a year or two of a complete
right.
change in habits and mindset. And how do you keep yourself going?
Hi, I'm Kristy Jo, founder of Body Buddies, a body transformation company. I want to help you transform your life into a healthier and happier you. I've already helped thousands of people change their lives. Go to powerfoodslifestyle.com to get your free copy of The Power Foods Lifestyle. This book will help you change your relationship with food, teach you strategic eating for fat loss and more energy, and help you eliminate the all-or-nothing diet approach. What do you have to lose besides the weight? Get your free copy of The Power Foods Lifestyle at powerfoodslifestyle.com.
Let's talk about what I have found, at least in my life and many of the people I work with, to be the greatest self-sabotager, which is fear. So I would love to hear your opinion on why people allow fear to be a part of what they do and how do they overcome it, and especially if you have any personal stories that you'd like to share about that, we'd love to hear them.
Absolutely. So it's funny because that's one of fear is there's a lot of words for fear. So instead of saying fear, let's call it worry, anxiety, doubt, indecision, frustration, stress, all of these words that we use to describe fear. And I would say that the biggest thing to do first is to understand why we get scared. So I feel like if we want to solve a problem, we should figure out why the problem exists. And so what you'll do is once you decide to study fear, to study human psychology, to study the brain, is you'll find that we're wired to be scared. So our brains are designed to keep us safe. They're designed for survival, right? We're not designed necessarily to succeed and accomplish our goals in that sense. We have like a 10,000-year-old brain, and the rate at which we've evolved, all this technology and all these advancements in society, our brains have not caught up yet. And so a lot of it is just natural instinct. So all the things that you feel, everyone feels. And that's comforting to know, right? So when I'm scared to quit my job or to start my business or to, commit to going to the NFL when I had a wrist injury and everyone's telling me that it's a dumb idea and I shouldn't waste all my money and time training and all these type of things. When I'm scared, that's a natural thing. So I don't have to beat myself up over that or, tell myself I shouldn't be scared or make any other type of claim. So that's first. Understand fear. Comfort yourself knowing that any feeling that you have is perfectly normal. It's perfectly okay. And it doesn't mean you should not do what you're doing, because 10,000 years ago, we had legitimate things to be afraid of, right? We had tigers and lions chasing after us. We didn't have roofs over our head. We had to try to figure out what we're going to eat next. We don't have those fears now. So now they're replaced with these dull anxieties that, are grounded in nothing very logical. So most of the things that you and I are scared of, we don't need to be scared of. And that's not to say you should beat yourself up. Just realize that those instincts are still ingrained in us, but we've been blessed with a conscious, rational mind, which animals don't have. and we need to learn how to use it. So that's first. Secondly, I would say learn and read as much as you can. So a lot of what our fear is about is because we don't know. It's a lack of knowledge. So a lot of times, quite frankly, you should be scared because fear many times is a signal that we should prepare. So when I'm scared going to quit my job last year as a firefighter, and all of my peers are telling me, yo, that's not a good idea, you know, like this and this and that, and making me feel, or I shouldn't say making me feel, but giving me their opinions that you know, maybe it's a horrible idea, and I feel scared, that's a good signal, because you know what I did when I felt scared is I went and figured out why I should be scared. And there were a lot of reasons. I got 5 children and a wife and a family to provide for, and I'm a very young entrepreneur. I have no idea what I'm doing. So that's why I need to learn and I need to grow. So many times we mistake emotions as something bad. They're actually a great thing. It's like the gas light going on in your car. You don't get mad when the gas light comes on, and you shouldn't turn it off, because if you do, you'll forget that you have an empty gas tank and you'll run out of gas. Smart people look at the gas light. They say, oh, good, I have low gas, and they pull over and they go get some gas. So your job with the fear is to understand the signal behind it. So what are you scared of, I would say? Maybe you're scared of, you know, not having enough money to do this. Maybe you're scared of what people will think of you. Maybe you're scared of failing. And then once you identify what you're scared of, analyze it, identify if it's legitimate. Again, we're using our rational brain here, because if we want to be just like animals, we'll just follow any of our fear instincts, right? And if that's the case, we'll go to the grocery store and eat up every single sugary, fat, and salty thing that we see, because we're also wired to do that, right? Which is exactly why, you know, I just learned in the grocery stores why they position all the foods in the way that they do, because they play to our instincts. And so I don't want to be played. I don't want to be played. A lot of, you know, everyone's playing to that fact. Marketers play that fact. Now, you got to be smart and market to yourself and use your conscious, rational mind in order to get you to move farther. And so I spend a lot of time unearthing my fears, figuring out what are the beliefs behind it, what exactly am I scared of, what do I believe is the worst thing that can happen as a result, and then I simply prepare my ass off. So if you, like, and this is what I do with my clients and my athletes, is like, there should be no one alive who is more prepared than you. And by I mean prepared, I mean every single aspect of your life needs to have a game plan, an anticipation playbook, which is basically anticipating any possible scenarios that can happen and having predetermined responses for it, and you're preparing for them right now. And this is a concept that's not very complex. It's pretty much obvious, right? It's like if you go on a road trip, you're not just going to hop in a car without any money, without your wallet, without any directions, you know, without any idea where you're going to stay. As a football player, anyone who plays sports, understand this is one-on-one. You need to know your opponent, know who you're up against, have a predetermined response for how you're going to respond when it's, you know, low. Maybe you're down 10 points. What plays are you going to run? Maybe you're up by 20 and you want to ensure that the team doesn't come back. You have the specific plays you're going to run. And so it's a trip how we can play a game that way, but we don't play the game of life that way. We're unorganized. We're disoriented. We have no idea what we're going to do tomorrow. We have no idea what we're going to do next week. And all of our goals and short-term goals and plans do not fit inside of a vision or an umbrella. And so much of my approach to fear comes from my approach towards life, which is have a vision and set up some goals, some systems, and some routines to facilitate getting to that vision. And in the meantime, learn as aggressively as possible and consistently evaluate. And so, again, most people are looking for some quick, like, little tip, and there's a lot of those. But I would just tell you, I will warn you, because when you try those things and it don't work, it's because you didn't. It's the big picture. It's like if I try to teach you how to make, you know, world-class chili, let's say, and I say the key is you just got to put cumin in there. You go and make your chili, you put some cumin in there, you taste it, and you wonder why it's not delicious. It's a bigger picture here. You didn't roast the garlic. You see what I'm saying? You didn't saute the onions the right way. You didn't simmer it long enough. And so that's what I help people do, is figure out, like, that big picture idea behind what it takes to live a great life, and realize that the fear is going to be there. So it's never going to go away. That's the other thing that people don't tell you. It's never going to go away. And it should always be there. It's a great signal. And fear is a great motivator as well. I told you, you know, many days I wake up and I'm tired. I don't want to get out of bed. But guess what? There's fear that gets me out of bed. So fear is a very great motivator if we learn how to use it correctly.
Wow. So being able to harness it, when a lot of what you're saying requires us to live at a way higher level of consciousness than probably a lot of people are. Having a game
Right.
plan, having a strategy, having structure, which a lot of people, I think, as we grow into adulthood, especially if we grow up with structure, we either are going to love it or hate it. And I have found in observing people that getting rid of structure, they think it's freedom, and it's actually the opposite, because it doesn't allow you to continue progressing. It's the way the human mind works. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. You mentioned animals out in the jungle, and I've heard you talk before about this being a lion in the jungle. Tell us more about what that means.
Absolutely. So like I told you, I have 5 children. We go to the zoo out here all the time. And one of our favorite things or favorite animals, attractions, is the lions. Everyone loves the lion, especially men. We love lions. They're majestic. They're powerful. And we go see these lions, and it's super awesome to see them. Sometimes you catch them awake. But what you find is that these lions are lazy, they're lethargic, and they don't have a lot of energy. I've never seen a lion in the zoo roar, right? And so we came up with this concept with my children. Is like, I want you guys to not be a lion in the zoo, because a lion in the zoo gets everything handed to them, right? They're safe. When it's snowing, it sometimes snows out here, it's raining, they got a little cave to go up under. They get their food made. They get the shots, they get the little shots, immune. They don't hunt for their food. Everything's safe for them. But guess what? They're not happy, and they're not self-reliant. So I want myself, the people who I coach, train, to be lions in the jungle. Because lions in the jungle, things are not guaranteed for them. They have to fight for their food. I was watching this documentary with my son, and we were on lions, and how, they had the little cubs, and the cubs were getting ready to get eaten by some snakes, and they were separated from the mom for about 3 days. The mom was trying to hunt to feed the cubs. Then when the mom gets the food, the male lion, I didn't know this, they come and basically eat all the food and leave none for the kids and the mom. And so it's tough, it's rough. But guess what? They're living in accordance with their DNA, how they're built, and they're happy. Those are the lions that roar. Those are the ones that we like. Those are the ones that we see powerful, majestic, lively. They're alive. And so for us, that means we must have the lion in the jungle mentality. And what I found is that there's 4 rules. I've created these 4 rules that I believe a lion in the jungle must live by. So it was like this. Number 1, set aggressive outcomes without limits. That means we can't be like everyone else and set reasonable goals. We have to set aggressive outcomes that don't have limits. And by outcomes, I don't just mean, goals, like short-term goals. Sometimes it's wise to set a reasonable short-term goal. But what I mean is set an aggressive outcome, what it is your vision is for your life, who you want to be. Don't limit yourself on that. So don't limit what's possible for you. So set the aggressive outcome. But after you do that, see, most people will set an aggressive outcome, but they don't do number 2, which is boldly face reality. And the lions in the jungle, they have to face reality, because reality slaps them in the face daily when they wake up and their stomachs are growling and there's no food that's been prepared for them. So you have to face the reality that you don't have the skills that you need yet. You don't have the mental stamina and endurance. You are not organized. You don't have clarity. You are lazy. You do have bad habits. So face the reality. Boldly face it, because it hurts. It hurts to look at that. And then 3, once you face that reality, you have to go through the fire. Now you actually have to do whatever it is that's being asked of you to do. Whatever your vision is requiring you to do, you have to do it. So go through the fire. So for me, that was quit my job last year. I identified that was the next step. I knew where I wanted to do. I knew what needed to be done. And so if I was to be a lion in the zoo, I would stay at that job. As a firefighter, it's a great job. It's a good paying job, great benefits, a lot of security. You can't. Once you get in the union, you have to pretty much kill someone if you in order to get fired. You can do pretty much anything. Like you'll be at the job forever, 30 years, 40 years, even if you want it. But that's a lion in the zoo mentality. So you have to go through the fire and actually do it, and it hurts. And it's called going through the fire, because you will get burned. There will be failures, etc. But after that, once you've gone through the fire, number 4 is you got to systematically raise your standards. And this is where a lot of people falter, because they might go through the fire and reach a goal, let's say, right? But what they fail to do is raise their standard after that. And so this is almost like a gift and a curse of a lot of people wired in this way. And not everyone's a lion in the jungle. Not everyone can be a lion in the jungle. There's going to be a lot of people who opt for the zoo life. But lions in the jungle are always hungry. They're always hungry. They're never really satisfied. There's a great Thomas Edison quote. He said, "Show me a thoroughly satisfied man and I'll show you a failure." Thomas Edison was a lion in the jungle, and he got it. Now, if you're one of those people who have to have everything perfect and, you want to reach your goal and have life all be cushy and all that, many people will realize it doesn't work that way. You're going to be hungry again because human beings are designed to grow. We're designed to evolve. We're designed to expand. So once you stop doing that, you become unhappy. You become complacent. So if you're complacent, if you're unhappy, if you're depressed, I would ask you, what are your goals? Are you systematically raising your standards? That means after you've accomplished one goal, that should no longer be, your old baseline should no longer be your baseline. You've got to raise your baseline. And that's tough because it's just like, for example, just income. If you make $100,000, then $100,000 should not be your baseline anymore. Raise the baseline, whether that's for your health and your fitness, whether that's for your relationships. What was cool for you a year ago in your relationship should not be cool for you anymore. You need to raise the standard. And a lot of times that's associated with pain to a lot of people. But guess what? We're wired that way. One of the main, read the book Charlie Munger, Poor Charlie's Almanac. He breaks down the 25 cognitive biases. The first one he talks about is the pleasure-pain bias. Human beings are wired to avoid pain and go to pleasure. So just realize that. But guess what? If you go by that off your instincts, then you're not going to live at your full potential. So if you raise your standard, there will be pain associated to that. But with our conscious, rational mind, we can wire ourselves to experience pleasure from that growth, right? Like a great bodybuilder gets pleasure from that pump and that burn. It's painful, right? But they like it. They've wired themselves to like it. And they wire themselves that way because they do it over and over again. And they use their conscious brain to focus on the benefits of that pain, the benefits, because they know that pain is going to bring them more muscle, which is what they want. And so when you go through a fire, when you set those aggressive outcomes, you face the reality, you go through that fire, it's going to be pain. And then when you reach that goal, set the bar higher and just realize there's going to be more pain. But I want you to think like a bodybuilder. Bodybuilders, if they opt to just go out the same way, anyone who knows bodybuilding knows that if you want to consistently build muscle, you've got to add more pressure, more demand on your muscles than they can handle. That's why low reps, higher weight, right? And so if you're always doing the same weight, your muscles are going to be like, okay, that's what I got to do. But if you put higher weight, your muscles are going to say, oh, man, he's asking me to lift more. Let me go ahead and build some more muscle. So next time he feeds me, I'm going to build and reconstruct these muscles in a different way so that I can lift this weight for him. And so that's what happens in your mind. That's what happens in your body when you set those high goals. You look back at 3 months. Like the way I set goals, I look back 3 months and realize, dang, like I've grown a lot. And I don't always reach my goals. I don't set goals just to reach them. I love this Barack Obama quote I was watching, and they were like, did you accomplish all the things you set out to? He's like, that would be a failure if I did. That means I was setting my goals low. Like you shouldn't reach all your goals. Your goals are not designed for you to reach them necessarily. Your goals are designed to get you to grow, to get you to expand. Because if you get a goal and you didn't have to grow or expand, you're like someone who wins the lottery, becomes a millionaire. But what happens to those people? They lose it in like 3 years because they can't handle it, because they didn't grow. They didn't build their mindset. They didn't build their habits or systems to match that result. So my job only is to do whatever I can, like a farmer. A farmer is not responsible for the result. He's responsible for doing what's necessary, and then God takes care of the rest. The sun takes care of the rest. Nature takes care of the rest. He's not responsible for that. He's responsible for making sure he does that soil right. He feeds it right. He gives it the right type of nutrients. He makes sure that it gets enough sun. He makes sure bugs don't come and kill it. That's your job with your results, and you focus on that. You're going to be light years ahead of everyone else.
You basically socked me in the stomach just barely. That was amazing because you hit on something I've personally been kind of trying to figure out. What do I need? What is going on? And as our listeners know, I like to kind of personally indulge and pick your brain on something going on in my life. So it's been very interesting to me because I've been through a lot of fire the past 5 years, build my businesses, write books, and, the drill. When we lying in the jungle,
right.
You make some noise and it hurts and it sucks. And I kind of hit a comfort point, and I feel as if I'm almost afraid to set those next goals because It's like, oh, it's going to hurt. I'm enjoying like cruise control right now. But, I basically what I'm hearing you say, and I wrote down, raise the baseline, because what was cool for me last year is not anymore. And I got to stop avoiding the pain to reach my full potential and endure the grind because I can't limit myself at this point. I didn't come this far to only get this far. What advice would you give me at this point?
And first of all, I would relate to you 100% because I know exactly what that's like. I get, for me, what I get nervous with that is within my relationship. And so I sometimes wonder if I'm going to be able to live up to the standards that my wife may have for me, that I have for myself in terms of what type of husband I can be. And I'm like, man, so for example, I always get anxiety around her birthday and Christmas because I want to make her happy. I want to make her feel special, but I'm scared. And so I would say, it's pain associated with raising a standard, right? It's a pain of failure. What if I fail? What if I don't do it? What if it doesn't work out? And like I said, we all have that. So first, we just need to forgive ourselves and realize that's human nature and that's natural. So that pain is an indicator that you actually need to do it. But secondly, I would say I would focus on the pain of not doing it. So what if you don't raise your standards? Because the law of entropy, right, when they say if you don't focus on something, the natural thing that's going to happen is disorder. So if you don't believe me, if you've ever lived somewhere and you moved, what you found is that there's so much work when it's time to move, and there's things everywhere. And you're like, what happened? It's because you didn't focus on that area. And so if you're not growing, you're actually dying. You're in the process of dying. So anyone who has a business and is not focused on continuously growing it and expanding, gaining more profits, more revenue, more customers, more success, more followers, you're actually in the process of dying. So if there's an organism in life, like a tree, if a tree's not still growing, it's in the process of dying. And so that, to me, is way more painful than the idea of possibly failing. And then I would remind myself, what's the worst thing that can happen if I set a big goal? I don't reach it? Well, who cares? Who actually cares? You might care, but do people around you care? Is there some goal police that's going to keep tally of whether or not you reach the goals? The worst thing that can happen for me if I set a very aggressive goal, let's say I say double the amount of money I made or triple, what's the worst that can happen is that I take a lot of new action because a new goal is going to require you to take new action. I learn a ton of new things, and I probably, that old quote, the cheesy quote, but it's so true, you reach for the moon, you'll land amongst the stars, right? So the worst thing that can happen is that you might not reach your goal, but you'll definitely be farther along than most people. So, for example, I like the whole lemonade stand. If a kid goes out to sell lemonade and says he wants to earn $20, right, that kid is going to be like, all right, I'm going to shut up, I'm going to make a little sign, and I'm going to sit here and hold up the sign. And that kid might make $5 or $6 in a couple quarters, right? The kid who says, I want to earn $500 selling lemonade, he automatically starts to think in a new way. So he's like, there's a baseball tournament going on there. What if I set up on the base right by the baseball field, and then also set up a block, by the parking lot as people leave the thing? So let me call my friend up and see if he wants to set a stand over there. And then let me think, what if I sold water bottles as well? Maybe some little, some granola bars. And what if I put a little donation cup there and told him what I'm earning this money for? I know people like to help little kids. This kid might not make $500, but guess what? He'll make a lot more than $6 in a couple quarters. He'll walk home with probably about $100, maybe. I don't know, depending on how hard he went, depending on how nimble and agile he was. But my point in saying that is that the kid who set the aggressive goal, he learned way more than the kid who was just sitting there getting sunburned, with a sign. I always wonder why kids do that. Why are you just holding up a sign? Do something else. Do something to stand out. But you won't think that way unless you set the bar high. And so that's how I coach myself, because I get scared as well. I'm like, I don't know, because I did very well last year. But I found out very quickly, as soon as you start to rest on your laurels, that's when a whole lot of shit can happen that you might not want to happen. And life, I believe, is very unforgiving to those people who don't continuously grow. I feel like the law of nature is growth. So it's actually your duty. This is another angle, by the way, and this another angle is that what you do, Kristy, is so important to so many people, right? You have clients who love you. You have people who love you. All these people listening to this podcast, they love you. They subscribe to you. They share it with their friends. that means there are so many more people. It's the world of almost 7 billion. I don't know if we're at 7 billion yet. That many people.
Yeah.
How many people have iPhones, have podcasts that are not listening to your show? How many people are not getting access to your material? How many people are not hearing your voice? How many people are not doing the strategies, the habits and things that you show them specifically how to do? That is your moral obligation to reach more people. You must reach more people, because if you don't, then you're not living in alignment and your true purpose. And nature, I would say again, is unforgiving to those people. Those people who relate to nature in a harmonious way are the ones who are happy, are the ones who grow, who are the ones who experience all of the success that we see and say they relate harmoniously to nature. And so my job is to pretty much be what God designed me to be. And we are designed to give. We are designed to add value. We're not designed to grow. A tree that grows and bears more fruit adds more value to the jungle, if you will, right? And a tree that only makes a little bit of fruit and it's stingy with its fruit and how much it gives, its lifespan is probably not going to be as long. So that is what I would tell you. That's what I tell myself. That's what I convince myself of every day, because it's easy, especially when you get some success. It's easy to start chilling and say, yeah, things are going great. But I just tend to attach more pain because, again, human beings are wired to avoid pain, and we avoid pain more than we go to pleasure. So I can use that on myself. I can use my conscious mind and rationally decide to motivate myself by saying the pain associated with not doing it is much greater than the pain that I'll experience from looking at my goals and saying I didn't reach them necessarily.
Wow. Thank you. That is very powerful, and I'm sure not just for me, but for all of our listeners, everybody who's feeling those same things. Sure, we've all grown. We've all come to a certain point, and it's not to discredit any of the hard work and the grit we have had, but guess what? We're not done.
Right.
And I appreciate you pointing out duty, and to translate that to our listeners now, what is that duty in each of your lives? What are you being put in that situation that you have a unique responsibility, whether it's at work, whether it's in your community, in your family, and taking that, dispelling the fear, getting rid of all the doubts, saying, I need habit, I need structure, I need to be that lion in the jungle. Niyi has given us some amazing, amazing points. I feel so motivated, but motivation can't just stop, right? We got to go do something. We got to go say,
right.
Action. Go. Nothing is going to last forever until you place a new habit there. So how we continue that, guys, is he has 2 podcasts. He has a sports motivation podcast called I'm Not You, and then Get Your Mind Right. And they're both on iTunes. I will have the links to those in the show notes, as well as your website is imnotyou.com, right?
Right.
Are you on Instagram, Facebook, any of the other social platforms?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Niyi Shobo, Niyisobo. Same thing on Twitter. On Facebook, check out my fan page, Niyi Shobo, imnotyou.com. It's that whole thing. And I would look forward. You can also email me. So you can find my email on my website. And I love, hearing from the people who are listening. I love hearing about your struggles, your triumphs, things that you want help with. Because, like I said, you talked about the sports motivation podcast. I feel like anyone who wants to be a high performer, who aspires to be a high performer, especially athletes, you got to listen to the podcast, because there's not many things out there like that catered towards athletes in the way that I've done it, because I've played at the highest levels. And I realize, like, people need to know how, much like how you break down specifically, like specifics. And I was watching some of your YouTube videos the other day. Like, you go in depth. It's not, and that's what people need. They need to know and understand why these things are important, how to do them. Like you said, it's not just about the motivation. Motivation is critical, absolutely critical. Motivation are the reasons behind what we do. It's the fuel. However, if you're motivated and you don't have the tools and the systems and the strategies to follow up, then you're going to be out of luck, and it doesn't matter how motivated you are. So it's definitely, you need both, and I provide both of the Get Your Mind Right podcast and the Sports Motivation podcast. So I definitely think you guys should check that out.
Fantastic. Well, we're sure honored to have you on the show today, and, pleasure to connect with you. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on.
If this resonated with you, please share it with one person who comes to mind. Investing in yourself is the best investment you're ever going to make, because when you improve your life, everybody around you improves their lives too. Subscribe to this channel so you are really sure to catch our next power session together, so you can continue to power your life to one of more service, value, and love. Until then, power your life today.